Back again with another movie review, and this time we're talking about Godzilla minus one. This was not a minus. This was a big plus. Big plus. Godzilla minus one is the newest Toho movie, directed by Takashi Yamazaki, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, and it just debuted in theaters. I actually just got done watching the movie at the earliest showing on Thursday that we have up here in rural Maine. And if you've at all watched this channel, you should know well and truly that Godzilla is one of my most favorite characters from just all time, pretty much. I grew up watching all of the fantastic Godzilla movies from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up into the 2000s and then 2010s with the new Legendary stuff, and I've been a fan of pretty much all of them. Even the really kind of kiddie ones, when you go back now, they're definitely not huge on like special effects as much as the guys in the suits and stuff like that, but growing up, absolutely loved it. When Legendary came out and said they were doing a new monster universe with Godzilla and King Kong and some other monsters, I was super excited. And that came out, absolutely loved it. You know, they were taking Godzilla serious. They seemed to be trying to make it as realistic as possible, and they did a great job. And they've made several movies, I think actually 4 different movies in the monster universe up to this point with a couple of different shows. And honestly, I was just talking to my buddy today about it, and it's like, we've been pretty lucky because the movies, say what you will about some of the stories that go into them and some of the human characters. I mean, I always have just a ton of fun with them because I'm really there just to see the kaijus mostly. And that typically just pays off and erases any sort of bad things that may have happened with script or acting or just story set up for those movies in general. That is not needed in this one. This is by far, and I'm not even kidding, I say this is the best made Godzilla movie that there is. This one has basically everything that you would think about a just wonderful, good, dramatic period piece. You know, this is set in the late 40s, post-World War II, with Japan trying to kind of pick up the pieces and move forward. Then there's a little monster waiting for him that may be a little bigger due to some stuff that happened during the war. But what's so unique about this one, okay, there's actually several things that are super unique about this one. One, and we're just going to talk about the human characters in this one pretty briefly. I am going to try and keep this spoiler-free because I want people to go see this and be surprised as much as you can in a Godzilla movie. I want people to experience this as kind of blind as possible because it just, when you walk into it, it's just so almost awe-inspiring. The story itself of the human characters is really, really good. The story of this is such an interesting thing. It is set, like I mentioned, right at the end of World War II, and you're basically just put right into it with a pilot on the Japanese side, and literally it's probably the most quickly that I've been pulled into a movie with the emotions and the story. And I didn't even really know what's going on at the beginning. It's just trying to kind of get you into the story, but then everything kind of expands about what the situation is, where they're at. All of a sudden you get to some action. Not going to really say exactly what happens, but there's some really cool stuff. The movie itself really is about, well, I mean, you've got Godzilla, of course, but Godzilla is a repercussion of the war and of itself to a certain extent. This is kind of an origin story again for the Godzilla character that's very unique, but also very, very cool. Had a lot of the throwbacks to the original Godzilla too. But this one, it really made me, as a person that I tend to think that I know a little bit about history just because I grew up in a family that really valued history and learning lessons from that. So I knew a little bit about World War II, but honestly, this movie did such a good job about exposing me to the Japanese side from World War II, and not even in a way of, oh, you know, Japan and the US and this is the big quarrel and who's right or wrong with all these things. It wasn't anything like that. It was just the common soldiers in the Japanese army, what they were kind of experiencing, what they were told to do, the conditions that they were in, and it's horrifying. Like immediately you're drawn into this and you're just in this funk because you're really just kind of like, you're in the headspace of like people that are basically told to just go die for your country, even though you know that the war may be ending or is basically over. And it's just a very, very heavy thing, and dealing with the repercussions of that in a different cultural way, because again, coming from the US growing up, it's so different to see how different cultures value different things, and especially at different eras. And Japan is always one that I've really, really loved the culture. I've loved so many things about it. A lot of that's probably stemmed from my love early on from Godzilla, but it's just so interesting to see a culture that values honor and like order and things like that so much that they're willing to do pretty much anything that they're told. And it's just very, very interesting, and the sets and the cinematography on this one is crazy because it looked like 1940s Japan. I mean, the scenery, all the vehicles, the boats, like everything. It was so cool. It was really like a snippet out of time and it's just very well done. This was not a low budget movie by any means. I mean, it's really, really good. The writing is really, really good. The characters are very, very strong, which is not normally the case in most Godzilla movies. Again, most Godzilla movies, you go to see Godzilla and the other monsters, but this one, it literally could have been just like an epic wartime kind of movie, dramatic movie, just happens to have Godzilla in it. And I'm actually really thankful it did. The other thing I will say before we get to the big man himself is that the writing in this and the way that they switched up the pacing every once in a while was perfect. It is a dramatic movie. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of heavy topics and some very stressful situations, but at the same time, the humor that they throw in this one, if I was to tell you that this was actually a pretty funny movie, you'd probably be like, are you kidding me? No, not really. No. This one is humorous just enough when it needs to be. You know, this is something that, like if you're familiar with like early Marvel movies, you know, they would use humor as a good outlet to subvert expectations in certain scenes, you know, and this is almost just like that. It's not where it's like joke after joke after joke. This one is literally, there's a couple times when some things are said because you're laughing because you're like, this is exactly what I just said in my seat when this same situation happened. Something pops up, something explodes, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no. And the character is just like, oh no, but they say it in a more funny way. The timing is really good. Godzilla. Let's not bury the lead on this, okay? The movie itself and the characters and everything else is fantastic, but the Godzilla that we have here is freaking scary, okay? Growing up loving Godzilla and watching all the old ones, one of the recurring nightmares I do remember having is waking up and looking outside and seeing a gigantic Godzilla walking towards me, and then it's that impending dread of not really thinking I'm able to get away. This kind of puts you right in the middle of that, and it's really, really creepy. He is scary and smart, and there's just those eyes. This one, again, it has that Toho style. It's kind of a mix of, I'm not sure if there actually was practical stuff that happened, but it looked very realistic, and the CGI was really, really solid. There were actually a couple scenes in the water that I literally jumped, and there were a couple of them where I'm actually watching things happen, and I'm like, did they get into the water with like a big floaty thing and make it move around? Because the water that was going around all of the gigantic goodness of Godzilla, everything looked so real, and it was creepy. Like the boat chase scene that you've seen in the trailer, if you've seen the trailer, is horrifying. There's several times where this gigantic thing sneaks up on people and it's just scary. I mean, just the sheer size of him in general in different cities, and you're running down the street trying to get away from him and he's just knocking buildings over, walking through, or turns around and hey, there goes all those other buildings. It's horrifying because there's not really a way to get away from that. Although I will say people need to learn how to zigzag or at least, you know, run laterally. Don't run just straight where he's walking. That's kind of happens at sometimes, but at the same time, it's not a fault of the movie. Godzilla would probably get you anyway. Anyway, I'm going to try and keep this relatively brief because I'm just very excited and I don't want to just continue to rant too much. I absolutely love this movie. I don't know that I can say much more positive other than I think this is the best made Godzilla movie that we've gotten. It's almost perfect, I'm not going to lie. And how it ends and some of the things that happen at the ending, go check it out just because it made me smile. Oh, before I get any further to the rating itself, the thing that really just, it gave me goosebumps. I'm almost getting them again now just thinking about it. They own the rights to the soundtrack and to the Godzilla theme, and they use it. They use it very effectively and very well. This movie, I'm going to give it a 9.5. Okay, I'm going to give it a 9.5 solely on the fact that I didn't want anybody to like really lose in this quarrel that was happening. The characters that you're brought along with throughout the whole movie, they develop so well and they're so likable and they seem like real people. You want them to do well, but I'm always going to root for Godzilla. So, I mean, it's kind of a hard dynamic there. You know, I'm a little bit of a conundrum. So, I mean, that's the best possible problem, I guess, to have, honestly, in a Godzilla movie. So I'm going to sit right now with a solid 9.5, and I'm not even going to doubt the fact that right now, I think this is the best movie of the year that I've seen. And I've seen some good ones this year. I've seen some trashy ones, but I've also seen some really good ones. So go out and see this one. Please go see it in the theater so we can give it some love and hopefully get some more movies made because this one was just fantastic. If you've seen it, let me know what you think in the comment section. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you thought it was trash. You bet not. Okay, you bet not. But please do let me know what you think. And let me know what your favorite Godzilla movie is of all time. Because after watching this one, I'm going to have to go make my list because there have been some good ones. But this one, right to the top. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Go to hit the subscribe button if you would. That'd be fantastic. And as always, you're awesome. Peace out.